Essentially, they are cutting a hole into my neck, placing a tube inside that would be connected to a ventilator to help me to breathe. When my medical team first introduced the idea of my needing to be trached as a result of my respiratory failure back in the summer of 2010, I was absolutely terrified. My only reference point at that time for people with trachs was those anti-smoking commercials, where they looked so deathly ill, they sounded like robots. I had never seen anybody with a trach that was portrayed in a regular or positive light, where they were living a normal life, enjoying and still happy. And so I was so scared because I had all of these preconceived notions that I was going to be a monster, that people were going to constantly look at me and stare at me in public, and that I was going to sound like a robot. So I just couldn't understand how I was possibly ever going to live a regular life again. 14 years later, I lay here with a very different perspective. Now, the reason that I needed a tracheotomy was, again, I was going into respiratory failure as a result of my genetic condition, myofibrillar myopathy, which slowly weakens your muscles over time. And in this case, my condition has affected my diaphragm muscle, which is the muscle that supports our lungs for breathing. Now, I touch on this a little bit in my top 10 answers video, where I answer the question, how do you eat and drink with a trach and MFM? If you're interested, check out that video where I go into detail. But essentially, I had to do a lot of therapy to be able to regain my speech. I had to relearn how to breathe again, because with the trach, it alters how I breathe. I'm now breathing through this hole in my neck as well as through my mouth and my nose. I also had to go through what's called a speech and swallow study in order to be able to be approved to eat and drink again, and I'm very thankful that I passed that test, and so I am still able to eat solid foods. A lot of people ask me if the trach hurts, which it doesn't, because I've adapted to it, and just after some time, you really don't feel any pain at all. I honestly barely notice that it's there anymore. It's kind of crazy because you would think that something so invasive would be on your mind 24/7, and yet it really doesn't bother me like that. Like I said, I've had my trach now for 14 years. When I was first trached, I was a lot stronger at that time. My diaphragm was stronger, and so I really only needed the ventilator support at night or when I was sleeping or resting. Fast forward to now, I am completely ventilator dependent. Ever since the pandemic and being quarantined at home, I was using the ventilator a lot more, causing me to get drastically weaker and therefore needing the ventilator at all times. I could tolerate being off of the ventilator for about 5 to 10 minutes max before I start to really panic and freak out. I'm also starting to understand that a lot of it is mental, but it's really gotten a lot more difficult for me to be off of the vent and be able to breathe comfortably. I travel with my ventilator everywhere. It is in a backpack hooked up on the back of my wheelchair. My battery life lasts anywhere from 4 to 5 hours, which can be very nerve-wracking right now, especially when I'm doing things like speaking engagements or going out with family and friends for the day. Unfortunately, I'm not able to afford a spare battery at the moment. It's about $2,000, and I'm trying little by little to save up so that I can get that, because it would really help to make my life not just easier, but less stressful. I do travel with a plug for my ventilator, and so most of the time I'm usually hooked up to a wall, which is kind of annoying just because I'm not able to be as mobile in that case. I'm usually stuck in a corner somewhere, and that could be really frustrating. What I didn't realize is that the trach needs to be switched out every so often. Usually it's about 3 to 6 months. Personally, I have to have my trach changed every 6 months. I thought that when I got my trach, it was a one and done type of deal. That they put it in and it was just something that I was going to have for life. The trach is biodegradable, it goes through wear and tear, and because my trach is cuffed, there's a tiny balloon that's attached on the inside that I inflate and deflate. That allows me to create a closed circuit airway. So the air between the ventilator and my lungs is traveling through a closed system. Right now, my cuff is deflated, and so that's what allows me to talk. Because the air is escaping through my mouth, passing through my vocal cords. But in order to be able to rest my lungs and fall asleep, I need to have the cuff closed. Now, if the cuff becomes damaged or there is a leak of any kind, that becomes an emergency situation, which has happened to me before. In that case, I'm no longer able to close the cuff, and therefore I'm not able to sleep. In that event, I then need to rush to the emergency room and have the trach replaced immediately. So by going in to have the trach exchanged every few months, we try to avoid that and try to get it changed before there's any damage to the cuff or the trach itself. I inflate and deflate or open and close the cuff with this syringe. You see it's attached to this little bulb here, and that kind of lets me know whether or not the cuff is inflated. I've gotten too weak to attach and detach the syringe, so I just leave it attached at all times just so that I have easy access to inflating and deflating my cuff. It gives me a lot of anxiety when my cuff is inflated and I can't communicate and I'm not able to get to the syringe, or if the syringe isn't attached. That just makes me really, really anxious and panic. So I prefer to have it attached just so that I have access to it. God forbid if I need help or I need to call out for assistance, then I'm able to grab the syringe. I mean, I do still have a little bit of difficulty just because of the weakness in my arms and hands, but once I get to it, I usually use my mouth, okay, and then I inflate. There we go. And that's how I do it. Now, there are moments, especially like if I'm waking up out of a dead sleep or I'm just having a weak muscle day where I'm not able to open and close the syringe myself, or, if the syringe falls in a place where I'm not able to get to it. And in those instances, I do get a little scared and panic a little bit, but I'm usually able to get to my phone. And Emmanuel, my caregiver, is always within an earshot and checks on me from time to time. So usually I have a way of getting in touch with him and letting him know, and then he'll come in and assist me. Initially, when I was trached, I would have my trach switched out at the bedside by either an ENT, which is a ear, nose, and throat doctor, or another physician who was trained to do so. I was always so nervous when it came time to do that. I don't know why. I just found it so uncomfortable. It wasn't really painful, but just the idea of having the tube yanked out of my throat and being pushed back in and being completely conscious for the whole thing just, oh my gosh, just really made me queasy. I was always really anxious until it was over. One thing about me is that I tend to heal very quickly. That's one benefit that I've been able to take away from everything that I've gone through. Except in this situation, there was one instance where the doctor went to replace the trach and was unable to get the trach back into the stoma because in the few seconds that he had removed the trach, the stoma had already started to close and heal. Thankfully, the doctor was able to get the trach back in, but the whole situation was very scary and pretty traumatizing, I must say. And so since then, my medical team has just decided that it would be safer for me to go through trach exchanges in the operating room where they had all of the necessary equipment and tools in case we're not able to get the trach into my stoma again. Now, if you have seen my viral video of me getting my voice back, that was one instance where what was supposed to be a routine trach exchange turned into a complete nightmare disaster. So if you'd like to know more about that, check out that short video as well as the explanation as to what had happened. We are celebrating Trach Awareness Week, and this Thursday I will be going in to get my trach exchange. The last time I had my trach exchange was about 6 months ago in the fall of 2023. This is a pretty routine procedure. I'm not really nervous about it. I know that I'm in good hands. I have been working with this team for so long. I have the same surgeon, usually the same anesthesiologist, who is the coolest. She is super sweet, always does everything to accommodate me and make me feel comfortable for the procedure. She plays my favorite music as I go into the operating room. She's always really aware of the fact that I get a little nervous right before the procedure, and so she gives me a little something to take the edge off. I just really appreciate the open communication in which I know that she's always going to do whatever she can to make sure that I'm both safe and comfortable. I actually went in this morning for pre-op testing. Usually a couple days before the procedure, they have to do blood work, which involves a type and screen in case, God forbid, I need a blood transfusion during the procedure, as well as an EKG, which checks my heart function and makes sure that everything is good with that, as well as a chest x-ray to make sure that I don't have any developing infection, pneumonia, or anything, because that would be really dangerous to go under general anesthesia if there was anything that was starting. I go home the same day of the procedure. I'm usually in the recovery room anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours, and then I head home and I usually rest up for the rest of the day. Pain-wise, I do have some pain after the trach exchange. I want to say for about 5 days to a week. Nothing that's too major. It just feels like a really bad sore throat, and my neck, like around the general area, can be a little sore. Being that the trach is a foreign object and my body's aware of it, I build up a lot of secretions and mucus in and around the trach as well as in my lungs. And in my first Top 10 Answers video, Does It Hurt?, I demonstrate the process that is called suctioning, where I am able to eliminate all of those secretions and mucus. So check out that video if you're interested in seeing the suctioning process, how that works, and finding out if in fact it does hurt. In addition to secretions, I do build up a lot of gunk around the trach. Again, it's just because my body is realizing that this is not part of us. We need to get this trach out. And so trach care is another aspect that's really important. My caregiver takes special care to clean around the trach just to make sure that that crud doesn't develop into an infection of any kind. Truthfully, I am so grateful for these videos, for your questions, because it really allows me to reflect on my journey in real time and process things with all of you. For example, right, I told you how terrified I was of being trached and all of these preconceived notions that I had. I envisioned myself as this monster that would never want to socialize or be seen in public again. I thought that I was going to be forever embarrassed and depressed about my trach, and that is so not the case. I'm now at a point where I have fully embraced having a trach. I am proud of my trach. I even use it as a fashion statement now. I make my trach look good, and I'm really happy, especially sharing my life on social media, to be a positive representation for anybody out there who may be trached already, anybody who is going to get trached, who has a loved one that is going to go through the procedure, so that they can look to me and see that it's not so bad. It's not as scary as it's made out to be, that you can live a normal, happy, enjoyable life with a trach, and that you can look damn good, that you can be sexy, attractive, and that you can live a badass, amazing life with a tracheotomy. All of my beautiful trach warriors out there, remember, you are not a freak, you're not a monster. In fact, you're beautiful, and your trach is a symbol of strength. Our scars are a badge of honor and should be worn proudly. You should hold your head high. And if people want to stare, let them stare. You look good, baby. Don't forget it. Having a trach is definitely not as scary and gruesome as it's made out to be. And it's definitely something that I'm grateful for. The technology that has allowed me to be able to navigate my condition and still be alive, even though I have to rely on life support on my day-to-day. I'm very, very grateful, because without it, I wouldn't be here. If it's one lesson that I've learned, there are things that happen to us in life that we may not necessarily know how we're going to deal with it. We are trying to figure out, how am I ever gonna manage to live a normal life or adjust to this new way of living? And I'm just here to tell you that it is possible, that as humans we do adapt, and that over time things do become easier and more manageable. I really hope that you found this video informative, and please, if you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to leave it in the comments. I love interacting with all of you, so please continue to like, comment, share, and if you're not subscribed to my page already, then what are you doing with your life? Join the Hard Train family and subscribe today. You can also join my membership for exclusive content, all things Christoph, as well as visit all the support links in the About section of my homepage, where you can get a copy of my book, which is now available as an audiobook on Amazon and Audible. One Man, 3 Hearts, 9 Lives, with over 100 5-star reviews, as well as my short documentary, It Started with the Heart, a Sugar Beach digital production by DocuMarket on Vimeo. You can also make a generous contribution to my GoFundMe in support of completing my life, dream, and mission to finish my full feature. Don't forget, I go live every Tuesday night at about 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time, and new episodes every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time of my Top 10 Answer series. So be sure to have your notifications turned on so that you don't miss any exciting new content from me. I thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Happy Trach Awareness Week, everybody.